It starts in a land where the mountains meet the sky. There, in an area of western Tibet, where few have seen it, rises a spring called the Mouth of the Lion. The river flows from that spring as the Eastern River and splits two of the world's mightiest mountain ranges, the Himalayas and the Karakorums. It slashes its way south through the foothills of the Himalayas as Abisan, father of rivers. Over the northern plains, it is called the Divider, the Defender, protecting its people against invaders from the west. Then it spreads out across the flat southern plains. There, broad and majestic, it is the Ocean River. And finally, it flows into its vast delta as the freshwater sea. This is the Indus River, one of the great rivers of the world. Today it is harnessed, diverted, and polluted, but it still provides life to the ninth most populous country in the world, Pakistan. The mountains of northern Pakistan are rich with history. Around the time of Christ, Buddhist monks traveled here. Carvings on the rocks mark their passage. Shrines of early Islamic missionaries recall a wave of change. Silk traders like Marco Polo crossed these mountain passes on their way to China. The last of many princes whose ancestors grew rich raiding the silk traders only gave up power in 1972. The Karakoram Highway, linking northern Pakistan with the south and following one of the silk routes to China, was only completed in the early 1980s. These high valleys of the Indus and its northern tributaries are a virtual desert. Little rain or snow falls here as the great peaks of the Himalayas cut off moisture from the annual monsoon. What does fall comes mostly as snow on the mountain peaks. There it builds into glaciers. When the sun strikes the mountains, the glaciers give up some of their water. As ice turns to water, the Indus comes alive. Because it seldom rains, the people of the villages must depend on meltwater from the glaciers to irrigate their crops. They eke out a living from the dry, stony soil, growing wheat, a few vegetables, and fruit trees. They also tend sheep, goats, and cattle. One of the problems they face is the lack of firewood and timber. Timber has to be imported into the area. Prices for wood are high. The people, having little cash, spend the cold winters with little heat. With some outside help, some villages in the area have responded by starting their own tree planting programs. In Gallipin, near the Chinese border on the Hunza River, the northernmost tributary of the Indus, there are two tree plots. One is an orchard containing fruit trees. The women and girls of the village work cooperatively to tend it. Up the hill is another plot containing willows, locusts, and poplars. Eventually, it will provide wood for heating and cooking, leaves and twigs for fodder, and, in time, timber for construction. One day a week, the men of the village work together in the plot. The rest of the week, responsibility for tending the young trees rotates among the families of the village. A village forestry specialist supervises the work. He has received plantation management training from the Aga Khan Rural Support Program. The program encourages the village to work cooperatively, offering technical support as the forestry project grows. Self-help programs like this one are spreading in Pakistan. In recent years, farmers have planted over 15 million trees. Kilometers south of Gallipin, the Indus flows through Khoistan. Gaining strength from the many mountain streams that feed it, the river crashes through this land. Khoistan is a land with a rugged history. It was the home of bandits and smugglers for many generations. When the British conquered the Indian subcontinent, they found Khoistan too tough and went around it. In recent years, the war in Afghanistan brought new refugees to the valleys. Destitute, they cut the once abundant forests, partly to meet their own needs, but mostly to supply timber to the cities of the south. As the valleys lose their timber, they lose their soil. Without the trees to bind it, rain and wind sweep the soil into the Indus. Finally, the great peaks are left behind as the Indus tumbles into the foothills. Here in the front ranges of the Himalayas is the highest rainfall in Pakistan. The climate is mild, the soil rich. This is the land of the colonial hill stations where British officers and their families sought comfort from the heat of the plains. Today, it is heavily populated. Timber is needed for building. Wood is needed for cooking fires. The result, denuded slopes and landslides during the rainy season. As the Indus descends from the hills, the mighty river is thwarted by the Tarbela Dam, one of the largest dams in the world. But the Indus is patient. Its heavy burden of silt settles into the 100-kilometer-long lake behind the dam. In time, it will fill the lake and conquer the dam, rendering it useless. Massive dam projects have been questioned by environmentalists in recent years for the disruption that they cause, often for too little gain. Tarbela did cause the removal of almost 100,000 people from their homes and lands, but it must also be looked at in a larger context. The separation of India and Pakistan in 1947 cut across the existing irrigation system, and disputes soon arose over the water. A 1960 treaty gave India the waters of the 3 eastern rivers, while allowing the waters of the 3 western rivers to flow uninterrupted into Pakistan. In order to save the irrigated land formerly watered by the cut-off rivers, massive diversion channels were set up. These supplied water from the western rivers to the eastern river basins, from which water had been diverted. Millions of people were thus able to stay on their land. Tarbela is one of the structures providing those diversions. It is therefore crucial to Pakistan's existence. Abasan, the father of rivers, who for thousands of years provided for the people of his own valley, must extend his beneficence to serve the needs of others. Below Tarbela, the Indus flows into the northern plains as the divider, the defender. Its mighty waters strike fear into the hearts of would-be conquerors of the fertile plains of the Punjab. Attock Fort stands in the path of those bold enough to cross. The Punjab is the breadbasket of Pakistan. It is rich in history. The capital, Lahore, was one of the great centers of the Mughal Empire, which ruled from the 1500s to the 1800s much of what are today India and Pakistan. Its rulers left a legacy of architecture and art that continues to influence present-day style. The richness of Punjab depends on water. Punjab means the land of 5 rivers. The land only began to reach its present prosperity when the canal system was constructed. Started by the British in the early 20th century and expanded by Pakistan in the years following independence, the canal system is the largest in the world. Today, there are over 61,000 kilometers of canals, leading to over 1.5 million kilometers of farm water courses. They irrigate over 11 million hectares of land. Life is good in the villages of the Punjab. But things are changing. Pakistan's population is growing rapidly. In fact, Pakistan has one of the fastest growing populations in the world. Today, there are about 120 million people in Pakistan, but in less than 30 years, the population may well reach 300 million. That will mean 3 mouths to feed for every one today, and families will have very little land. According to Islamic custom, land is divided equally among the sons of the family. In many villages, the average landowner has only 2 to 3 hectares. The next generation will have less than 1 hectare each. Soon, there won't be enough land to support a family. Many young men, although they may still own a piece of the family farm, will have to move to the city in the hopes of finding work. There they will join thousands of others who have been forced off the land, all of them with few skills useful in the city. But those who stay in the villages won't escape trouble either. The good water that flows through the irrigation system has brought life to the land for many years, but that water is turning bad. One of the Punjab's rivers, the Ravi, flows past Lahore, one of Pakistan's largest industrial centers. The Deg Nala is a tributary of the Ravi. It once produced 1 million kilograms of fish a year. Today, it is a cesspool of industrial pollution. Industries of every kind dump effluent untreated into the stream. The foul waters of the stream seep into the groundwater and poison wells. As it leaves Lahore, the Deg Nala joins the Ravi and its load of human waste from the city. Then it flows into the irrigation system. In Pakistan today, disease caused by human waste contaminated water causes about 40% of all urban deaths and 60% of infant deaths. Through the irrigation channels in the countryside, animal waste and chemical pollution from fertilizers and pesticides join the flow. Slowly but surely, the concentration of pollutants is building in the soil and groundwater. The wells in family compounds are becoming unsafe. Today, 60% of the groundwater of Pakistan's rural areas is polluted. In the fall of 1991, Pakistan unveiled its National Conservation Strategy. The strategy analyzes the various environmental problems facing the country and sets out a program for dealing with them. The strategy gives the government of Pakistan a clear set of priorities for handling these difficult environmental issues. Now the nation must find the political will and resources to face them. The Indus flows on into the southern plains as the vast ocean river. Its waters are further diverted to feed the irrigation system. Ironically, this system, the foundation of Pakistan's prosperity, is the source of another of the country's severe environmental problems. There is very little rain in Pakistan. On the plains, there are only 10 to 20 centimeters a year. Those areas not connected to the canal system are desert. But the irrigated land is becoming a desert too. A desert with too much water. How can this land, blessed with the life-giving water of the Indus, be a desert? Over the years, the constant seepage of water from the unlined canals into the soil causes the groundwater to rise. When the canals were built 30 to 40 years ago, the average groundwater level was 16 meters below the surface. Now it is only 3 meters. In many areas, it is higher, leaving standing water on the surface. As the water table rises, salt that occurs naturally in the soil and in the water from the canals is dissolved and carried upwards. As the water evaporates, the salt is left in the top layers of the soil. Now only a few salt-tolerant crops will grow. Initially, the irrigation channels brought new prosperity. There was hope for the future. Cotton brought cash to local economies. 30 years later, it barely grows at all. Where farmers grew wheat, beans, and alfalfa, only sugarcane and a special variety of rice can grow. Salinization affects about 25% of the irrigated land of Pakistan, about 3.2 million hectares. Each year, some 40,000 hectares are lost to production as the canals bring both life-giving water and slow destruction to the land. Salinization and waterlogging have been problems ever since early civilizations learned to irrigate fields. At the time of the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia, about 4,000 years ago, the Indus civilization flourished in the land that is now Pakistan. The city of Mohenjo-daro thrived on the banks of the Indus for 1,000 years. Eventually, the civilization deteriorated and was overrun by invaders from the northwest. One of the reasons, loss of soil due to salinization and waterlogging. Today, history is repeating itself in Mohenjo-daro. The site of the once great city, where so much is yet to be learned, is being destroyed by salinization from today's irrigation system. Can waterlogging and salinization be controlled? The answer is a qualified yes, if you have the money. In some areas, wealthy landlords use tube wells to pump up fresh water from deep in the ground. This serves several purposes. The water pumped up from deeper layers of the water table helps to lower the water table. The fresh water that seeps back into the ground helps to wash out the salt in the top layers of the soil. And finally, the fresh water can be used to irrigate a variety of crops. International aid agencies have helped to develop schemes using tube wells to reclaim land. They have had some success. The Indus flows gently through the southern plains, tamed by the barrages, its massive flow plundered to feed the irrigation channels. In the quiet landscape, the power of the ocean river can be envisioned only at places like Ut Sharif, where the tomb of Bibi Jawindi, a Muslim woman famous for her piety, stands on a hill above the plain. Built in 1498, the tomb was partly destroyed by the floodwaters of the distant Indus 200 years ago. As the Indus flows south, the great barrages divert most of what remains of its flow. In the dry season, the mighty river is no more than a stream as it wends its way towards the sea. To give some idea of the former glory of the river before it pours into the Arabian Sea, only the delta remains. At its many mouths along the Pakistan coast, it spreads across 300,000 hectares and stretches some 150 kilometers. As it reaches the delta, the Indus is heavily burdened. It carries thousands of tons of soil lost to the overworked land, the contamination of a score of cities, hundreds of villages, and thousands of farms. The final insult to the great river comes from the growing industrial complex at the edge of Karachi. There, steel mills, power plants, and factories are sprouting up to serve the needs of Pakistan's largest city and biggest industrial center. People have lived on the banks of the delta's creeks for many generations. The freshwater sea of the delta has always provided a bountiful harvest. Fish and shrimp abound in its warm, shallow waters. Its mangrove swamps have provided a ready supply of wood for cooking, heating, and fodder. For as long as anyone can remember, the local people have gone out into the swamps to cut the mangroves. Mangroves are a special coastal plant. There are only a few species, and they are found throughout the world's tropics. Their interlocking root systems capture the soil and stabilize the land, particularly in the face of tropical storms. Mangrove swamps perform another function as well. Many commercially important species of fish and crustaceans, shrimp, lobster, crab, spend some part of their life cycle in mangrove swamps. In fact, mangrove swamps are one of the most productive habitats in the world. But like any other species of plant or animal, mangroves are part of a larger ecosystem and are adapted to certain requirements. One of these is the balance of salt and fresh water in the system. Today, with some 90% of its waters diverted into the irrigation system, the Indus is no longer the freshwater sea. It cannot provide the fresh water to sustain the balance the mangroves require. With the flow of fresh water diminished, seawater invades the delta and the salt content of its waters increases. In the past, cutting mangroves for firewood and fodder was not a problem. Today, with pollution from the factories, losses due to the expansion of fishing harbors and port facilities, and more people cutting mangroves, the swamps are deteriorating. While fishermen with large boats go out into the Arabian Sea to catch fish, a small boat fishery catches shrimp and small fish in the waters of the delta. As the spawning beds in the mangroves have declined, their catch has been diminishing. Attempts are being made to preserve the mangroves. The World Conservation Union and the Sind Forestry Department have set up a program to observe changes. Scientists are using everything from interviews with local fishermen to satellite data to learn what is happening to the rich delta ecosystem. Studies are monitoring the pollution from the factories, the changes in the salinity of the water, and the effects of local woodcutting pressure. While they study the problems, the researchers seek practical solutions. In the Karangi Creek project, efforts are being made to restore the forest. Mangrove tree nurseries have been set up by the Forestry Department in several areas of the delta. As the young mangrove seedlings begin to develop, they are transplanted to allow them room to spread out and grow. Eventually, the seedlings will be planted in the creeks of the delta to rebuild the mangrove forests. Scientists in the Delta are also watching the work of the engineers on an extensive reclamation project called the Left Bank Outfall Drain. The water the drain removes from the farmlands of the Sind will be deposited back into the Indus near the head of the Delta. This water is less salty than the seawater. Reintroducing it into the Delta may help rebalance the salt level and thereby help the mangroves. Of course, all blessings are mixed. The outfall drain's waters will also be contaminated with agricultural chemicals, which may have a harmful effect on the ecosystem of the delta. The scientists wait. The Indus River, as it has for millions of years, makes its way, sometimes raging, sometimes meandering, down to the sea. Today it is chained to do humanity's bidding. But the mighty river will continue to exact its payment for this toil. Floods will ravage the landscape. New dams will have to be built as the river clogs old ones with silt. Ways will have to be found to redress balances of fresh and salt water if agriculture is to continue to thrive in the plains and the delta's mangroves are to continue to harbor the young of prized seafood species. The Indus will go on, and humans, thinking they have conquered it, will continue to adapt to its whims.